You've raised some, I think, very, very important points. And these are not partisan issues. This is not Democratic or Republican. Over the years, both parties have been champions of infrastructure investment, and both parties have been very clear about the need to respond to the disasters that have occurred. We need to be ahead of this, and we need to work together. It's our responsibility, 435 of us here in the House of Representatives. As we end this session, we should be willing to step forward in the lame duck session, provide the resources that are needed immediately, if they are not now available, for the rebuilding, for the humanitarian efforts and the recovery that's necessary. And then we should, although I don't know that this would happen, we should take that step forward to put in place those programs that will create an infrastructure that will protect Americans from the occurrences that we know have happened and will happen in the future. You've mentioned one that I think is very important, the infrastructure bank, together with the Build America bonds, shifting unnecessary tax breaks from one industry back into others so that we could build. And as we do this rebuilding, as we do these infrastructures, it comes to my mind, something you and I have spent many days talking about here on the floor, is that we make it in America, that we use American-made equipment to build these projects. We use American-made equipment and supplies in the construction activities. In doing so, we not only put in place the infrastructure, which is an investment for the long term, but we also build and rebuild the American manufacturing sector, so we can have a win and a win and another win. And so we could have a triple win here if we are wise in putting our policies together. And I know that many of our colleagues on the Republican side have taken up these issues. We have time, 2 months now in this session, to deal with this. Obviously, we have the big deficit issue, but we also know that in that deficit issue, we cannot forget the immediate and the immediate needs of America, and the long-term benefits that come from strategic investments. And I'll wrap with this, and then if you would care to, we'll call this a session. I was flipping through the channels trying to find the latest news on the current current scandal in Washington, and I came across, I think it must have been a PBS show on the Brooklyn Bridge. I think it was David McCullough had written a book on the Brooklyn Bridge. And the 150th anniversary of the Brooklyn Bridge is this year or maybe next year. It's in this period of time. And a piece of infrastructure that has served New York City and in a larger context the nation for 150 years. So what we can do now as we rebuild New York, New Jersey and the other areas, and please California also, as we protect ourselves from these natural disasters, we will put in place investments that will serve for multiple generations into the future. Now that's a capital investment with an enormous return, as the Brooklyn Bridge was 150 years ago. So we have these opportunities, and we ought to take advantage of them, not just for humanitarian reasons, but also for immediate jobs and long-term investments. That's our task. That's what we ought to be about. Not a Democrat, not a Republican idea, but a true American idea that goes way back to the very early ages of our country. Mr. Tonko, if you'd care to wrap, we'll call this a day.
Sure. Let me do this quickly. You know, I think we have it within our intellect to create the outcomes that are strong, that will reinforce those in need, and still go forward and address the critical economic times. I can tell you, because the memory is so fresh, people did not want to hear about offsets and Tea Party mentality when they were without last year. They lost everything for which they ever worked. They are endorsing now a balanced approach. Take a scalpel to the situation, don't wield an axe, come up with sensitivity, with an effective response using academics, deal with policy strengths in the long-term picture outcome, and get us our immediate assistance so we can rebuild and do it in cutting-edge fashion so we will have learned from this experience and come out even stronger. And I think in general, in a bigger picture framework, our best days lie ahead if we approach these issues with sound academics and with the skillfulness and the compassion required. Thank you so much for leading us in this hour of discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Tonko, and thank Mr. Pallone and Ms. Vasquez. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We yield back.
The gentleman from California yields back.